Last night, I took a friend out to dinner near my home in the south of France. It's nice, isn't it? At the restaurant door, we were politely asked for our vaccine passports. The QR codes on our smartphones were scanned and we were ushered to our table. The check had taken seconds, a very minor inconvenience when a new rave of coronavirus pandemic is sweeping across the continent. There was a sense of safety in knowing that all the other diners had proved themselves to be fully vaccinated, or had very recently tested negative, or had contracted the virus and recovered. If smartphones are a bit recherche for you, good word, you can print out a paper version of your vaccine passport. It works just as well. One friend who won't give up his ancient, very unsmart mobile has pasted his paper passport onto the back of his phone. That's probably even more efficient than fiddling with your smartphone to find the QR code. It's been like this in France since early August, when vaccine passports became mandatory for cinemas, museums, restaurants, theatres, bars, nightclubs, planes and long-distance trains. At first there was some pushback, some argy-bargy from those who turned up at a venue but had forgotten their passports. Now it's just part of routine of living with the virus. Of course, it's not foolproof. Nothing is. People who have been vaccinated can still contract and pass on the virus, but vaccination substantially reduces the risk of serious illness and hospitalisation, which is why medical experts are unanimous in their view that the more people who are vaccinated, the better the chance we all have of beating this virus. In France, vaccine skepticism was initially rampant. Can you imagine that? Rampant. But the week after President Emmanuel Macron announced the vaccine passport policy, a record 3.7 million people booked to get their jabs. As a result of vaccine passports now being mandatory for most things the French regard as making life worth living, such as going to restaurants, bars and cafes, he doesn't think much of the French then, France has now caught up with countries such as Britain, which were once far ahead of it in the vaccine states. The vaccine states. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the vaccine states. The percentage of people with 2 jabs is now virtually the same on both sides of the channel. France has vaccinated more citizens with 1 jab than Britain, Germany or Italy. 50 million out of the population of 67 million. Young French people, previously sceptical of the need to be jabbed, have rushed to get their vaccine passports so that they can go out at night with their friends. Which is a very good reason why Britain should follow the French example and also take note of what other European countries are doing and penalise the vaccine refuseniks. At a press conference on Wednesday, Boris Johnson hinted at tougher rules for the unvaccinated. There are still 5 million unvaccinated British adults who, through fear, ignorance, irresponsibility or sheer stupidity, refuse to be jabbed. In doing so, they endanger not us, not just themselves, but the rest of us. If they contract COVID, it is they who will be put the biggest strain on the NHS, denying the rest of us with serious non-COVID ailments the treatment that is our right. We are all paying a heavy price for this hardcore of the unvaccinated. As long as they can be numbered in the millions, the nation will remain unnecessarily vulnerable to the latest variant, meaning more lockdowns, more restrictions on our lives, more lost jobs, more failing businesses, less economic growth, all of which will follow the government's introduction of its so-called Plan B of enhanced restrictions this week. Now, of course, there is a small number of people who, for medical reasons, cannot be vaccinated. Those in that category can be identified and helped with regular testing to make sure they're COVID-free. But for the rest, it is simply selfish not to be vaccinated. We all have a responsibility to act in ways that don't just protect our own health, but also that of others. The evidence from France strongly suggests that if the unvaccinated see they will pay a price in terms of where they can go and what they can do, then they will think again and rush to be jabbed. I am not, however, in favour of compulsory vaccinations, and yesterday I was relieved to hear that Health Secretary Sajid Javid saying it would be unethical to make jabs compulsory after some misinterpreted the Prime Minister's call for a national conversation on the way forward to mean that mandatory jabs are being considered. There is something very un-British about compulsory vaccinations. I don't understand how you do it in a free society. I mean, are we really going to round up the unvaxxed, strap them to a chair and stick needles in their arms against their will? I would not even go as far as Greece, which plans to fine all those over 60 who refuse to be jabbed €100 per month from mid-January until they agree to be vaccinated. Older people are more vulnerable than any other age group, and those who refuse to be jabbed are foolish. But the over 60s can be pretty bolshy, so what happens when hundreds of thousands refuse to pay the fines? Is the Greek government really going to fill its jails with pensioners? It might make more sense for them to pay €100 to them to be jabbed. Austria, which is already back in full lockdown, is also planning to fine adult refuseniks of any age, starting at €3,600 and rising to €7,200. Perhaps Austrians are more compliant than Greeks, but I reckon this policy will run into the same problems. Even Germany is considering the nuclear option. The newly installed Chancellor Olaf Scholz is in favour of mandatory vaccination and is expected to offer a free vote on the issue in the Bundestag, Berlin's parliament. We are far from alone in implementing new restrictions as Christmas approaches, and throughout Europe infections are rising against the backdrop of growing concern about the Omicron variant. But we can learn from what other countries are doing, even if not all they are implementing would be right for us. That's right. Under Plan B, vaccine passports will be required for entry to nightclubs and at major gatherings and large venues. It would not be difficult to extend them, French style, to other public places, including restaurants, pubs and bars, and non-essential shops. Brackets. Even the unvaxxed need food and medicine! Exclamation mark. It will give those of us who've done the right thing more protection, and for those who've not, pause for thought. That's right, you unvaccinated. You need pause for thought. I'm not impressed by those who claim this is an egregious assault on our freedom. Liberty is not the same as unbridled license to do what you want, which is the road to anarchy. You can't shout fire in a crowded cinema if there's no fire. Real liberty for all involves a balance between rights and responsibilities. My right to visit certain African countries is balanced by my responsibility to be inoculated for yellow fever before I go. You cannot practice medicine without being vaccinated against hepatitis B. You have a right not to be vaccinated, but I have a right not to be near you, not to have you near me in a restaurant or on a plane. Do you understand? Sorry, this is not me, this is Andrew Neil, just reading it. And of course, it's absolutely right that everybody working on the front line in the NHS and social care should be vaccinated as a condition of employment, as they will be in this country from next April. As it stands, the unvaccinated are making more restrictions on our lives inevitable. It's all their fault. It's time we impose some on them. In a free society, the unvaccinated have a right not to be jabbed, but they need to realise that with rights come consequences, which will inhibit their freedoms as they constrain ours. One final thought. Singapore has decided that the unvaccinated who end up in hospital with COVID will have to foot their own medical bills. I doubt we'd ever go this far, but you can see the logic, even the morality of it. By all means, exercise your rights, but beware of the consequences. Oh, hello. Yeah. What are you going to do with that? Are you going to tell the teacher? Tell Mummy. Mummy, some guy was on a megaphone saying something that I didn't like or understand. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was the article that Andrew Neil wrote in the mail online. It's amazing that he was allowed to write that, because I think that sounds a little bit like hate speech to me, isn't it? It's a bit hate speechy, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's amazing. Wow. Anyway, so I've got here now a response to this, which was written by a group that call themselves the Uncontaminated.